Hello YouTube, this is Froglight. I started playing on the server about half a year ago, and in the time between Christmas and New Year it's tradition to look back at what one has achieved. So here's my answer to the question, how does one speedrun technical Minecraft? That means, which farm do we need to build and in which order to get all the important renewable resources as soon as possible. And here are the resources that I consider my priority targets. So the first job is usually to get decent tools and armor, and also an elytra. Usually the first couple of days when I don't have an elytra, I die about 30 times by falling to the ground. And then these are the essential resources. We need of course cobble for observers and droppers and dispensers. We need iron for everything. We need at least a bit of redstone. A couple of clerics will do. We need some source of food. We need rockets and also the sugarcane for paper. And we need shulker boxes, so we need some source of wood and shulker shells. We need some source of bone meal. And of course, if you do anything with flying machines, you'll need some quantity of slime. And I also consider beacons fairly important, not necessarily for the regeneration in farms, but mainly to have haste and also jump boost. I find jump boost fairly essential when building anything. And of course, personally, I like to use a lot of scaffolding, bamboo and string. And then are a few resources that I think are also very important, so I try to get them as early as possible. A gold farm, of course, to cure villagers, but also for piglin bartering. I need some income of obsidian, some source of ice. At the start, silk touching a bit of ice might be sufficient, but later it's really helpful to have a large quantity of ice. Of course, emeralds for villager training. Leather is also rather important, I think, for books, but also for item frames that I like to use. And of course gravel to mix TNT and concrete. Magma blocks are also very helpful. And blaze rods, if only to craft ender chests. I always have a ton of ender chests everywhere. And again, if you do something with flying machines, you'll probably want a source of honey. I'll give you a short world tour, showcasing the farms I have built. The server is already 8 years old, but the players agreed to start over again last spring, setting a new spawn and basically leaving everything behind. And this is where I joined. Now, if you're interested in checking out the server, you can always connect in spectator mode and apply to get whitelisted for survival. We also did a server tour, celebrating the birthday and showcasing all the stuff that was built in the last years. This is not a technical server, very few players build industrial farms, but it does run carpet and has a few nice features enabled, like stackable shulker boxes and carpet accurate placement. So this is a pretty good server for technical builds. We do not allow bots or duping, the only exception is TNT duping, which is allowed. Now before we look at farms, this is my starter base, including a decent storage room with a multi-item sorter. I wanted the base to settle in, get comfortable, so that I can build all the farms I want for all of the resources I need. I plan to start a mega base soon, but right now this is where I live. And it's large enough so that I can have everything in place and I don't have to live out of dirt huts. Just a few hundred blocks away is the shopping district, where I own 3 shops. The first is my shulker shop, that of course sells shulker shells, but also various stuff. Everything in shulker boxes, and all the resources come in industrial quantities. And over here is my cauldron, which is a shop where you buy a lifetime pass. Let me grab the pass out of my valuables box. So this is an auto brewer that stocks a lot of different potions. And this is a fully automated brewing machine that keeps this chest with potions stocked. So there's a bit of redstone, most hidden underground. That makes sure that all of these chests are always stocked nicely. And if you buy a pass, you will have a lifetime supply of all these potions. And my final shop sells colors, terracotta, and concrete powder, with the resources I get from my quarry. Okay, let's get to the farms. I'll try to do this mainly in the order that I built them and explain why I chose the specific designs. And of course I'll link all of the designs in the description in case you want to check them out. I did something similar on the last server I played, so feel free to check out that series. This was my Minecraft Farms in 3 minutes series. But if you've been with the channel for a while, then you know that I like to mix things up, and I very much prefer to create my own designs for farm, at least now and then. But I also tend to build and design farms that are very fast to build, because this allows me to build a ton of different designs. And when I arrived on the server, I settled down in this village here, because this was a nice little island that would become my industrial district. And after digging a few holes and grabbing the first redstone and capturing a few villagers, I started out with a few things that no longer exist on the server, because I removed them once I didn't need them anymore. So first I did a simple villager breeder. It's a very common design. I'll link a video from Logical Geek Boy. This one is great for New World because you don't have to provide food, you only plant some potatoes or carrots. It's a bit slower than other breeders though, but you can build your next farms in the vicinity while the breeder is working. And you can speed up breeding by feeding the villagers, just throw in a few stacks of food. And the goal, of course, was to populate an iron farm and to build a temporary trade hall. Then I did a cobble farm, but it was moved later a bit here. And I used this TNT duper design by Scorpio, which was improved by ENXO4 for his tree farm. And this duper doesn't require any coral or other stuff that you need silk touch for. So you can kill a couple of creepers for the gunpowder, and then you can build this duper on day 1 of a survival world. Later I built ENXO4's tree farm here and moved the stone generator over, because I like to reuse water collections and TNT dupers. So in fact this TNT duper is for the cobble generator for a tree farm. And on the third side I have a little contraption that allows me to convert dirt to mud, and also concrete powder to concrete, and even coarse dirt to dirt if I use a hoe. Next I built this iron farm, a quad-core design employing 4 groups of villagers designed by Gnembon. Initially I had 2 zombies in here, both scaring 2 villagers, but upgraded to a pillager later, which improved the raids a bit. And this of course allowed me to set up a trading hall, where I traded iron for emeralds and then built up my librarians. If you build a smaller iron farm, utilizing only 1 or 2 groups of villagers, you'll have to wait very long until you have enough iron to trade for all the armor and books you need. So I'd recommend a quad-core iron farm like this, which can really build rapidly. I also chunk-loaded the farm so that it produced iron in the background while I was gone, but at some point removed the chunk loader because I no longer need iron to trade and have a nice cache of iron blocks in reserve. And of course I set up a temporary manual lava farm to provide fuel for a few furnaces. So with the cobble generator I had stone bricks and smooth stone. Now the temporary trading hall is long gone, and I moved the villagers to a designated building here, out of the way, so that they are no longer loaded all the time, and also gave them a nice home, even though they have the occupational hazard of being zombified. But otherwise they're happy here. And I have the librarians for all the essential books, and just a few of the other villagers. Of course, the initial temporary trading halls contained a ton of toolsmiths, all trading emeralds for iron. And the next job was this universal mob farm here. Now, it's turned off at the moment because we have a mob switch running. But it's the usual Gnembon design, which is rather easy to build, you just need a few dispensers. But I do use manual killing, so the mobs are moved here and I kill them using a looting sword, because this way it gives a bit XP, which is nice to have at the start of the game, and spider eyes for villager curing, and just a bit better rates than building this farm lower. So you could of course AFK here and build it on the ground, but as it's set up here, the AFK spot is high enough that nothing spawns on the surface here. Of course the main jobs were gunpowder, bones and string. And for the next farm we'll have to go through the Nether. The next project was to set up a slime farm. Using Ilmango's swamp slime design that you can build rapidly once you get an efficiency 4 shovel, by just using a bit of iron and dirt. The initial farm was 25 by 25 blocks. Later I extended this to the size of 50 by 50, because I tend to use a lot of slime. And I started out by lighting it up using redstone torches, because they give a light level of 7, and you can space them out in a way that only slimes can spawn in this farm, because once a skeleton gets in here, all the golems are toast. Later I upgraded to brown mushrooms, which increased the spawning rates quite dramatically, because they give up a light level of 1, so you get the highest possible spawn rate for slimes. And this is a pretty efficient slime farm. Spawning rates depends on the moon phase, of course, but I believe on average this farm generates about 20,000 slime balls per hour. With the slime, I set up a little flying machine that allowed me to safely travel through the end, about 5,000 blocks until I find an end city with an elytra. So it's always good to have a bit of slime at the start to save a lot of time in the end. I also set up this Hoglin farm, which gives plenty of pork and leather, despite being a very simple build. I started only with the lower spawning platform here, and the whole thing took less than 10 minutes to set up. And at this point I was already pretty decked out. So the villagers gave me enchanted armor. I had slime and a bit of redstone from the villagers. And I believe the next farm was Enixophor's tree farm here, which is just extremely versatile. It's simply the tree farms with the shortest build time, while allowing to grow all tree types except dark oak. So you can do nether trees, you can do cherry, you even can do mangroves if you do a few changes, but it's possible to do mangroves. And it doesn't need any slime or honey for the crushers. So it's a really cheap build. And I set up this very simple fungus farm to provide the saplings. And also a bit of cactus goes in there. And unlike Ian's original farm, all the drops go into a composting setup. So here we have a ton of composters with item filters. And so all the drops that we don't want in our output chests, like all the warped roots, and if you do nether trees, all the warped blocks, will be composted here. And the generated bone meal goes directly back into the tree farm. So if you do nether trees, then you need just very few bone meal, because most of the warped blocks are recycled and are composted. Once the stuff gets past the composter, it goes first to the player to supply the player with saplings. And then it goes into a storage array here, which is just a mass of filters and shulker box loaders for all of the drops that I produce here in my industrial district. But at the start I just had a few chests. And the next project was the scaffolding shulker farm by ending credits, which is super easy to build and pretty cheap because it takes mostly scaffolding. I added the shulker box loader here for the drops. Unfortunately, right now it's broken because there were changes in 1.22 to the armor stand mechanics. But since I have a ton of shulker shells left, I have plenty of time to see if I can repair it. I believe Ending Credits has an updated design on his Discord. But if you want to build this farm, please go to the NoobTech Discord and check out what the latest design is. Along with the wood, I had everything I needed for unlimited shulker boxes. And of course, this allowed me also to set up all these shulker box loaders here. And the nice thing about playing on a server with stackable shulker boxes is that you basically only need one storage chest for all your shulker boxes. The next project was a combined farm for bamboo, sugarcane, melons and pumpkins, using my own farm design. So this gives me rockets and scaffolding. You can grow these 4 things using just one flying machine, and at the bottom, one minecart heater. After the flying machines finish, a few minecarts are dispensed, and collect all the drops. The minecart yeeter is a design by Inspector Talon, which is a really nice design because it doesn't need a Witherskelly skull or an amethyst cluster, but it uses just an iron chain. And then I buffer the items here in these double speed hoppers, which is usually fast enough if the farm has been running for a while. Now it was turned off for a long time, so we have quite a lot of bamboo and sugarcane. But it will collect all of the items before they despawn. And then they go into another storage array. Now I wanted a second storage array for 2 reasons. First, I didn't want to transport the items all over the industrial district. And second, I built a little honey farm designed by Enixophor and a little honeycomb farm which is designed by Imango. This is all within a 3 chunk area. So if I want, I can chunk load just the bee farm here and the storage to produce honey and honeycomb, even if I'm not on the server. Now this almost set me up with everything I needed for my survival world. One very important thing was missing, of course, and I did set up a little warden mob switch here. So let's not dwell here too long. So there are about 80 wardens in there. Of course what was missing was a wither skeleton farm. We have a world border on the server and no convenient soul sand valley near spawn. So it's impossible to build a Witherskeleton farm that is based on portals. And it took me quite a while to find a suitable location, about 4,000 blocks out. This is easily one of the most satisfying farms I ever built. Although, if I rank my builds on the server, it would come in at number 2. It's a version of Stromness Whiskey Train. So, as long as the player stands here, the player activates this pressure plate, which sends minecarts. And the minecarts collect the wither skeletons that try to get to the iron golem here. And transport the wither skeletons to the player. And this is not terribly hard to build. Of course it has to be in the soul sand valley, and of course you have to slap or to button up all of the spawning spaces here. So what I did, I started out and then I realized I needed a mob switch. And then I created the mob switch, and then it was of course very easy to slap this area here and to dig out the spawning platforms. This farm produces over 15,000 drops for coal and bones and around 450 wither skeleton skulls. So even though it's pretty fast to build, I think it took me less than 6 hours altogether, including spawn proofing, digging out the area and creating the platforms and the minecart tracks. It has pretty good grades. Of course the wither roses were generated by Enixofor's instant wither rose farm in the end. So this gave me beacons. So having Shulker shells, I bribed another player to get access rights to Enixofor's raid farm. He had already built this, and I added the beacons and the storage system here. So now I can use it indefinitely. And the raid farm of course is essential because it gives me redstone, emeralds, totems and other nice things like bottles and of course even more gunpowder. And this is a pretty decent farm because it's very fast to build. And still it will give you about 3 shulker boxes of redstone and gunpowder per hour. And I don't know, 20 shulker boxes of emeralds or more. You really don't have to worry about that anymore. It's a great choice for an early game raid farm. And of course the big thing that was missing was a source for obsidian and quartz and ender pearls and soul sand and gravel. All of which is provided by Piglin bartering. So this module here is still running. I started out with a very simple gold farm that was actually on top here. So just above the piglins I had the gold farm. And then both the gold farm drops and the piglin bartering drops would go into the same sorting system. So I only had to build one sorter array and one ice transport. But unfortunately I built this right at the edge of another waste biome. When I needed a larger gold farm I decided to move the whole thing a few dozen blocks and build this new gold farm here, which I covered in a recent video. Now let's turn off the particles. So on top I have boat looting and a decent amount of spawning platforms below, but I didn't have to break any bedrock or even create a perimeter. This farm produces crazy amounts of gold. It's up to around 180,000 gold nuggets per hour, or if you calculate it, it's about 2,500 gold blocks. It does need a second player because it's portal based, at least if I'm not alone on the server. But I can't tell you how much I'm looking towards the autocrafter, because I have chests of chests all filled with golden nuggets. And it would be really a pain to craft all of these up to ingots, so I'm kind of waiting. It's half a year until the autocrafter comes along, and if I need more gold ingots in between, I might have to craft something or do a temporary crafting setup. This farm also produces quite a decent amount of gold nuggets that I can feed directly into the shulker box unloader that provides the gold ingots for the piglin bartering. And in my opinion, this concluded the list of essential farms. So all the rest is optional, of course depending on what resources you need to build your base or to sell in your shops. But from now on, the order of building is pretty much arbitrary. You can build the farms in any order you want. I built 2 more portal-based farms. First, this combined magma cream and Froglight farm here. We have spawning platforms for the magma cubes that are lured into portals by iron golems. And the big magma cubes are killed by the player using a looting sword and drop magma cream. And the small magma cubes fall through and are killed by the frogs and provide froglights. Now this little farm here can be built in about 90 minutes. And it produces double hopper speed of magma cream and about hopper speed for each of the froglights. So we have 4 shulker box loaders here for the 3 types of Froglights and a magma cream. And I built a guardian farm. That's also a very fast build, because essentially you need 2 portals and a bit of soul sand and a bit of scaffolding. And in the Nether, the guardians fall out of the portal into a drop chute where they are killed. The drops are picked up by a minecart yeeting system and sorted out here with more shulker box loaders. It's not the fastest farm in the world, but it's enough to give me the sea lanterns that I need. So let's have a closer look at the farms in my industrial district. And if you've been following the channel, you know that I did a lot of copper stuff. So let's start with my take of ENX04's copper farm. Player is standing here and the zombies are spawning. And the nice thing about the farm is that it will restart itself if all the zombies are killed. Because here we just have a spawning platform where the zombies are lured by turtle egg into this drop chute here. You can kill all of the zombies for lag considerations, and then after a few minutes the farm will start to produce this crazy amount of zombies. And another nice feature is that we can throttle the spawning rates. So what we can do is just light up part of the farm using redstone lamps here. So if the lamp is on, this part of the farm is no longer spawnable, and we'll only get a very small amount of mobs. So without a farm we are at about 700 mobs and perhaps 12 MSPT. But if we turn on the lamps because other players are online or I want to go AFK, then the farm will be throttled to something like 5 MSPT. And that's my very own copper aging machine, designed by myself. It allows me to age industrial amounts of copper while being AFK, so you don't have to place and break the copper. And it's much easier to build than, for example, Cubic Meter's copper processor or Pixel Riff's David machine. And the way it works is the player sits in a minecart and is moved by this flying machine here. And the player places copper blocks against the older blocks. And all of these flying machines will push the copper over all this path. And the copper, of course, is aging. And then the copper is broken by this TNT duper here. We have a fully automated resupply. Here's a shulker box unloader where I put in the shulker boxes with fresh copper blocks. And this water stream resupplies the player with the necessary amount of copper blocks. Of course, any excess is funneled back into the system. And then we have temporary storage for fresh copper and the 2 aged versions. And the fully oxidized copper goes back into the shulker box loader. I have used cobblestone to push out all of the copper, because at the end I was out of copper, so I just filled the machine using cobble. I also added a few modules of ENX04's sheep farm, which is another great early game farm that requires hardly any resources. And later, when I needed a ton of wool, I added this wool farm of my own design. It has about 200 sheep and produces, I don't know, 7,000 or 8,000 wool per hour. And of course all of the drops go into this item sorter array here. I also added a small sniffer farm for torchflower seed and pitcher pots, which are very nice decorative plants. And nearby, of course, is a villager-based wheat farm. But later, when a friend of mine on the server required an industrial amount of packed mud, I added this AFKable wheat farm here. This is just Redisio's micro farm with 3 dispensers bone mealing the wheat and the piston breaking the wheat because the light level goes to 0. And we have a shulker box unloader for the bone meal on top that supplies the bone meal at 6 times hopper speed. And at the bottom we have 2 minecarts and 6 hoppers to pick up all of the crops. Of course the seeds are composted and the wheat goes into the storage system. It also allows me to generate beetroot at double hopper speed as well, and carrots and potatoes even faster. The next projects were 2 wood farms. So here's a mangrove farm designed by myself that produces mangrove logs faster and easier than the ENX04's farms without a lengthy change of setup between wood types. And here's a dark oak farm designed by Shady J. I love dark oak. I think it's the best wood. And this farm is a pretty nifty design that pushes TNT from the side and from above. And the farm is protected by water streams and blocks with high blast resistance, like anvils. And the player stands here, plants the saplings, and as soon as the farm detects a tree, player is lowered to be far enough away from the TNT explosion before he places the next saplings. So that's a beautiful design and a reasonably fast build for a precious resource. And also, the way I like it, most of the redstone is hidden underground. Now then I threw in a little moss farm because I was tired of crafting up bones. This is also my design. It's not very efficient, but it's a fairly easy build. And it also allows me to filter out some stuff. So at the moment I filter out moss blocks, but I could also filter out, for example, flowering azalea saplings if I needed them. I also built a little Netherwart farm using a Mangrove's design from his Peaceful series, because we have a nether tunnel design that requires quite a lot of red nether bricks, and therefore it's quite handy to have a decent farm for netherwarts. And here's the Dripstone farm, because we needed a ton of Dripstone blocks on the server. Now it's my own design, but I later realized that this Dripstone farm design was pretty much exactly the same that Ilmango created. We just have two flying machines, one dropping the dripstone on top and the other one sweeping the floor, sending all of the dripstones into a water stream that goes into the soda. And underground is a little glow ink farm, the usual design with the water columns and a minecart at the bottom. I had to light up a few water-filled caves for that, otherwise it was a very small build. And just a few chunks away I did a little flower farm that allows me to grab the different color types. I made a dedicated machine for cocoa beans, which produced a brown color. It's a bit of a failure. I originally hoped I could just push the cocoa beans into the water stream down below. That's not how the farm works. Well, that's fine. I don't need that much. And here's a dedicated farm for black ink. The player stands at an AFK spot. And this area here is the only part of a river biome that is in the vicinity. And we just have a few portals, and squid will spawn between the portals and go into the portal and be killed in the nether. So that's a really efficient black ink farm, almost double hopper speed I think, and again very few effort. The green dye comes from a little cactus setup that has been here for ages. And of course I did construct a temporary smelter, minecart based, with 24 furnaces. It's about time to replace this with something that is faster and also handles shulker boxes for output and input. So that's all of the colors taken care of. The remaining colors we can mix from the colors that we have. And that's my take on Knerman's ice farm. So there are water streams pushing the player along. The player breaks the ice goes into the water channel and is picked up by a few shulker loaders here. Also we have a mending module. We have piglins coming in that are aggroed by a snow golem. So they drop and produce XP. And the XP goes into the water stream and at some point passes the player and mends the pickaxe. And of course a couple of regeneration beacons allow the player to stand in here indefinitely. And the purpose, among others, is to provide blue ice for the super fast boat ice speedways, allowing me to travel very fast through the nether. And possibly ice for a boat racing course that I might build at some point. But for the last couple of months I've been busy with two rather large projects. And the first project was a quarry, because I hate mining deep slate and sand manually. And I guess I just wanted to build a quarry. It's a small one, just over 100 blocks wide. But it works great. And there are a few steps necessary to run the quarry. Now the first step is we need a tunnel bore, clearing out about 8 blocks here. So this is Desu's double shot tunnel bore. And the next step is to create these 3 wide trenches. And the trencher design is by voiding. It's a beautiful little trencher that creates a 3 wide trench. and is actually liquid proof. As long as you don't mix lava and water. You just have to check a bit with FreeCam. Do we have lava and water? If not, you can just let it run for quite a while. And now let's turn on the quarry. And it's basically a two-step process. At first, we have flying machines pulling out blocks that can't be pushed. So they will first try to push the blocks in, which compresses all the holes and gets rid of most of the liquids. And then the remaining blocks are pulled out. So here's a rather big hole. And then we have water filling the gap here. So we can safely blast all these blocks with TNT. And then we have TNT dupers breaking all these blocks. And all the blocks are put into a water stream here and are transported to a sorting system in the Nether. And this is the sorting system for the quarry. I'll never need Cobble deep slate again. I'll never need sandstone again. Here in the back are more chests filled with shulker boxes. We get granite, we get diorite, andesite, tough gravel, even quite a lot of dirt, and healthy amounts of terracotta. Now I already took out most of the sand. We have the colored terracotta and other stuff. Of course, a lot of cobblestone, calcite, plenty of raw copper. I even grabbed a shulker of diamonds, lapis, coal, raw gold, raw iron. Also a ton of redstone. I already grabbed most of that. So I chose the spot for the quarry where it had a good chunk of mesa. So this part here created a lot of terracotta. And then the quarry continues to go on for quite a while through a desert. At this moment, the sand is really the only resource that I need here. Because, of course, we need sand for TNT and for concrete. I already started working on creating a perimeter here that will be the home of a few high efficiency farms. And it will have a nice chunk of river biome where I can build another copper farm. But that is in fact the second perimeter I'm creating on the server. Now what you see here is some version of decked out that one of the players is building here. And I created a perimeter so that he has plenty of space to build up all the redstone and more space for more levels. And maybe now you get an idea why I needed all this packed mud and the dripstone blocks and the moss and more. I can't wait to see this operational. I also created a couple of mob switches. So here's our nether hub. And for the nether we have 4 groups of wardens. Each around 100 blocks from the nether hub. So whenever a player is near the hub, she or he will load in 1 or more groups of wardens. Essentially players are protected in a radius of about 300 blocks around the nether hub. But if you are further away, then you can run the usual nether-based farms, provided no other player loads in the mob switch in the hub. And I also created a mob switch for the overworld, which is about 350 wardens here. And we have a chunk loader that keeps the wardens in the lazy chunks, so they won't create any lag. And all you have to do to activate it from the nether is to flick the switch to enable the chunk loader. So I hope you liked my little farm tour. So I probably forgot a few things. I think I built a blaze farm. I'm also standing on a mud drying machine because I needed a bit of clay for map art. But I think you get the idea. I'm pretty much as close to playing creative as it's possible in survival Minecraft, because I have all of the renewable resources and also quite a lot of the non-renewable resources from my quarry. I certainly have some fun projects left, if only a goat horn farm or a music disc farm, but I certainly have all the important resources that I need to build anything, and also now I have the resources to build a mega base. I tried to link videos to all of the farm designs that I used, except for a couple of farms that have either very common designs or where I don't really know who created the farm. So please check out the description of the video. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and please leave a like if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye bye!